Hello, and welcome to another ohmTown Daily News Show. Um, I am using a service called Restream to send this in two different directions, one over to Twitch and one over to YouTube. And YouTube acts a little funky with this. It's not showing my video in my admin stream, but maybe it's something I'm doing wrong. At any rate, welcome to the inaugural episode of ohmTown over on YouTube, YouTube Live specifically. I am not a partner on either of the platforms, obviously. There is probably nobody in either of my chats right now, but I wanted to try this out, see if it works. I am in the chat in both of the venues. So if you send me a message, I will get it. Happy to discuss whatever it is we are going to end up talking about. I've already selected about 12 articles from ohmTown. For YouTube, if you've never heard of ohmTown and you've never gone to ohmtown.com and you've never been over to Twitch and you've never even, well, if you've never heard of it at all, that means you haven't downloaded the podcast, you haven't been on the Discord, you haven't even maybe you've stumbled across it here on YouTube or over on Twitch. I do stream it every day. The time frame changes depending on what other duties I have that are bearing down on me. It tends to be a little hectic here in ohmTown for Mayor Watt. I am Mayor Watt. That is ohmtown.com. I aggregate news there for my daily life, and I've opened up ohmTown to everybody. So go on over and become a citizen of ohmTown. Obviously, we can chat here. We can chat in the comment section of YouTube. You can contact me via the website or via Twitch or via Twitter. I'm over on Twitter as well. I even have a TikTok, but I don't use it. Plenty of reason, but at any rate, what I do here each day is I go over a selection of articles, and since today is the first day that I'm going to be restreaming it via restream.io, I don't have a partnership or anything with Restream either. I just happen to be using them. I'm going to make this rather short, and I also have construction going on, so things get a little crazy here. But this will not by any means be the last time that I stream directly over to YouTube at the same time that I stream over to Twitch. Okay, so yeah, things are a little weird today. Anyway, let's get into today's news. But first, again, let me close the loop on what ohmTown is. ohmTown is a news aggregation site that has a community built around it, but people really aren't chatting. They're consuming it, I know, because I see the metrics, but they aren't posting messages. That said, you can post messages anywhere you want. I will see them. If I don't, then get in touch with me in a more effective way. Obviously, I missed something, so get in touch with me. What ohmTown does is it aggregates news from around the world 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, around 200 sources. Sometimes they're functioning, sometimes they're not, because I disable them depending on the efficacy of the news that I'm getting. What ohmTown ultimately does is it funnels it into 6 main categories, which is create, news, education, entertainment, social, and technology. These are the domains that I'm interested in. And what I do in my daily life. So I work in several fields and really enjoy having as much information as possible and not just focused on one particular silo. That said, under those 6, there are about 50 channels, and these channels I intend to bring to Twitch and now YouTube, and as well as bringing it over as a podcast as well. So I'm looking for people who want to host or co-host within these various categories, 6 main categories and then 50 subcategories. So if you are interested in a particular topic, please again get in touch with me and we'll talk about it. Yeah, we'll have to. I won't go into detail here on the stream, but willing to talk about it if you are. So, how the day works is I go over the news, and it is a broad spectrum. Some of it's going to be games, technology, sociology. I've got a section here. So, depending on where the news is coming from, it'll get thrown into temporology, which is a channel that I want to talk about time and time travel and the science and science fiction thereof. For instance, did you know that you can actually train yourself to perceive time at a different rate than other people? Depending on how fast you're going, time is different. Depending on if you are a gamer, you may perceive time at a different rate than me or the person sitting next to you. And things like refresh rate actually do make a difference. Even, well, up to a point, but really it's our physical limitations, not the technical. Although technical plays a role. If you are stumbling into this place while I am just rambling, just know that I practice a thing called associative thinking, wherein we might talk about something like soybeans in California being processed for a drink and end up talking about conflict in Afghanistan because we're all connected. That's the merging of business, technology, and society. That's where I talk about. That's the crossroads that I stand on, and I try and relate the material that I consume to others under that umbrella. So let's get into today's news, and maybe, just maybe, I'll get some questions. I don't know. Somebody might find me. This is the first time I'm over on YouTube, so I started this, by the way, at the beginning of the year. I've done 174 episodes without missing one so far, knock on wood. And I hope that I'll be able to continue this. I'm trying to ramp up spending more time with the stream. So let's get going. And again, feel free to throw some comments my way. The very first article today is in the Daily News Show. It is a channel within ohmTown. It just happens to be the name of this show, ohmTown Daily News Show. That's because that is the general daily holistic news aggregation show, whereas the rest of these shows are going to be more niche. You know, Law Nerd talks about law. From my perspective as a layperson, and I hope to bring in a person who can be a subject matter expert. But there's always some kind of conflict with working with attorneys, particularly if it's perceived as a partnership. So attorneys can't have a partnership with somebody who's not an attorney if either of the people are acting as an attorney. I know it gets a little buzzwordy and inside baseball, but there are a lot of channels that I want to bring, but I just can't do them all. I mean, I would be working 250 hours a week, and it's just not doable. So let me know if you're interested. This first article, though, in the Daily News Show is a woman was rescued after telling a restaurant employee that she was being held hostage. A woman who feared for her life, as in being held hostage in a New York City apartment, found an alternative way to call for help without alerting her captor. I'm not sure what just happened, but let's click the link. So the way that it works is you click the link and you get taken out of ohmTown over to the news source. So when I post links, I typically post links into the chat of Twitch. But now, because of the way that it's configured, things get a little weird. I have to post them in two different chats. So there's the chat. There's the link that takes you over to this article, and I'll have to do it over here as well. I will work out a better way of doing this. But at any rate, it doesn't matter for now. When you click the link, you go out of ohmTown and over to the source. I typically don't play audio or video from a news source. If you want to watch the video or audio, I might do the audio at a later date or the video at a later date. But we'll see. So, a woman allegedly held hostage in New York City apartment uses Grubhub order to alert police. A 24-year-old included a note with her order asking for help, police say. The article was written by Julia Jacobo over at ABC News. Their website actually is abcnews.go.com. That one flows real well. So a woman who feared for her life as she was allegedly being held hostage in a New York City apartment found an alternative way to call for help without alerting her captor. Gosh, I cannot believe that people do this. I can't imagine the terror that somebody must feel to be in this situation. The woman and suspect had met in person for the first time months after they connected online, police said. The encounter soon turned violent, according to police, and the suspect would not let the woman have her phone, except to order food, the station reported. So she said, she posted in a note, additional instructions. That's funny. Additional instructions. That's where she had the opportunity to leave this note. God, I can't imagine what somebody's going through. Please call the police. Is going to call me when you delivered. Come with the cones. Please don't make it obvious. Obviously, she was in a rush to make this a life-saving opportunity. Potentially. Well, I mean, her safety was obviously in question here. There's not much I want to really get into it. The suspect, 32-year-old, last name is Royal, Kimoy Royal, was arrested in the the New York City Police Department. Told ABC News in a statement that Royal was charged with many things. Good. Unfortunately, the law doesn't stop criminals from perpetrating abuse on people. And it's a shame that somebody has to go through it. Let's go on to the next article. And this is how it works. I go through the news, post the links into the various places, and then talk about it for a brief period. And because I've got about 20 of them or so, I typically spend about 3 minutes or so going through it. This is Doug Mastriano's Rootin Tootin school shooting prevention plan. The GOP nominee for governor in Pennsylvania wouldn't arm teachers with books, funding, or resources to teach, just guns. Well, that's just brilliant. This is an article over at commondreams.org. Because nothing says let's have gun safety in a classroom like having more guns in a classroom. So the GOP nominee for governor in Pennsylvania says, let's see here, actually. So this is an article over at Common Dreams by Steven Singer. And it says in the article, a teenage boy in a black trench coat walks down a school hallway. A young girl abruptly turns a corner and is about to walk past when she stops and notices an oblong shape in his coat. He pulls out an AR-15 and points it at her. Let's see here. I know what you're thinking, the teacher continues. My homeroom teacher, Mr. Callahan, has a gun in his desk. Did he remember to bring it with him to hall duty? Oh my goodness, what is this? Apparently this is how Doug Mastriano thinks school shootings can best be prevented, by basically having somebody roaming the halls. Sure. A lot of schools actually have an off-duty police officer actually on duty, or semi-on duty. I'm not sure actually how it is everywhere. I know that the ones that are around our schools actually are active duty, on duty police officers Um, I don't know how much it actually impacts. You can't prove the negative, right? You can't prove something that doesn't happen. You might be able to say, oh, well, since we implemented this, there was a decline. But if it never happened, then obviously there's no metric for that particular period. So, yeah. And I warn people that I talk to that I think that a lot of the discussion in Common Dreams articles um, really cuts through and has an emotional element to it. And I personally don't discount it. I accept it for what it is, and I think about it holistically, whereas a lot of people will say that it is inflammatory, and I actually agree it is rather inflammatory in nature. But it's designed so that you get impacted by it. You don't just shrug and move on. If you shrug at something like this and move on, it's willful ignorance. You're just not interested in hearing about somebody else's perspective, and that's a shame. I listen to all sides, um, and make a decision based on the evidence. Heartstrings or not that get tugged. The idea here is to understand the full scope of what is being discussed. And I don't know of any instance where everyone having guns suddenly solves a problem. Gang violence has guns scattered all over the place. I just watched a video the other day where a woman walked across the street and shot somebody right out in the middle of nowhere. It was in the middle of, I think it was Atlanta. Might have been somewhere else. I'll have to look. But it was in the Law and Order channel here on YouTube, or over on YouTube, whichever place you are. So I don't know. I think it's rather sociopathic to just start throwing weapons at people and saying, "Here you go. You are now a duly designated uh, defender of the church." I think we all should be, but we have bigger issues, and that is that you really don't know who's going to snap at some point. And it's usually about opportunity. It's usually about equity, and it's at odds with the coping skills that we teach. And we definitely don't even come close to addressing mental health issues, which are, to me, largely environmentally based. But it's a very big conversation, and I can't spend all of my time talking about it. So let's do this. Let's move on to the next article, and we can come back and revisit this as time goes on. The next article is in the Stock Marketeers channel. They have a deep dive, and it's titled, "This Dividend Fund is down only 3% this year versus the S&P's 20% decline." And here are the manager's top stock picks. So John Kornitzer explains why Buffalo Flexible Income Fund has held up so well during the bear market. Let's click the link and it'll take us through ohmTown over to CNBC. No, MarketWatch. Okay. So this is a MarketWatch article, first published on the 22nd, and then they edit it at some point. So at least at 7:58 a.m. today, this morning. And that's why it's back in my news feed. I may not have spoken about it previously, but it's an article written by Philip Van Dorn. And let's see here. It has a bunch of stock tickers, referenced symbols in the article. But it says here, by now, even the most ardent tech and growth stock enthusiasts realize the bull market is over. John Kornitzer's approach to selecting high quality stocks for the Buffalo Flexible Income Fund is one that has worked well during the bear market. By the way, this weekend, I think I'm going to be doing my first Hatch Ideas show, which is about business transformation, talking about stocks, stock market, and personalities within the business world. I think this episode is going to end up talking about Jim Cramer, because he's in the news lately. And I have his 2022 picks and that I've looked at, and I will we'll take a gander at his picks for 2022. You might be surprised. The last thing that I heard about him is that he has like a 30% accuracy rating, and that everybody really talks about him in terms of he's entertainment, not financial guidance. But like attorneys who are entertaining and hyping up themselves as entertaining attorneys, they are still representing themselves as attorneys. And this guy is representing himself as a financial advisor to some degree. He's talking about the news. He's talking about the data that is supposed to be deciding, enabling people who view him to decide. And while some people will say, well, think about it, he's on TV. Yeah, people consume a lot of TV. And so it's not necessarily true that he's pure entertainment if people follow it. Now, everybody has to do some critical thinking. But when times get bad, people start suing because things aren't working out the way that they thought they were based on the information that they were given, and guess who's giving it? I preface everything with, I am not an attorney, and even if I was an attorney, I'm not your attorney, just like I am not a financial advisor. And if I was a financial advisor, I am not your financial advisor. I am a strategic management consultant, but I am not your strategic management consultant. I will talk about business from my particular perspective, and I do not warrant its efficacy for your particular use, because everybody's context is different and context matters. You'll hear me say that quite a bit. So the Buffalo Flexible Income Fund is down only 3.3%, whereas others are down. Well, the S&P growth is down 27.86. And really the problem here is when you look at these, like even the value is down 12. But there is a margin of risk here that warrants that decline, because when times are good, growth related funds will spike, just like a value fund will have less risk and thus it will decline less. Now, when you are novel and creative and might find some gem or a unicorn in the rough, and you glom onto it and attach it to your fund, then obviously it's going to go up. But there's a really good chance that it'll decline. Mainly because you really don't know what the market holds for it. Hopefully they're doing some holistic analysis and not just pure tech. Says the Buffalo Flexible Income Fund was established in 1994 and has $455 million in assets. Its objectives are to provide investment income and capital growth. It can invest in bonds, but now it almost entirely invested in large cap stocks. The fund's dividend income is enhanced by writing covered calls, a strategy discussed in detail. And you can follow this link and it'll take you over to the strategy discussion. A call option is a contract that allows an investor to buy a stock at a particular price until the option expires. The covered call option is one that you write when you already own the stock. Kornitzer said he sells covered calls deeply out of the money, so he would only be forced to sell a stock if it were to rise at least 20%, when he would be likely to trim or sell a position anyway. So he's managing his risk. I'm not sure about the minutia of this particular fund, but it's interesting that it's only down 3.3%. Different funds, different stocks are being impacted by this incoming recession, stagflation. Well, it's going to go inflation to stagflation and then recession. and hopefully not too not be too bad. We will see what happens as time goes on, because we do have, I think, a long recession ahead of us. Um, and by that I mean how long this is really going to impact the common Joe like me is wholly different than the one percenters, the ultra rich. They can weather this storm and still make money on their money and not on their backs, not carrying the load of working day to day for $7.55 when gas is $7. You can imagine, particularly being told that you have to drive into work, just how much that is a burden on somebody's livelihood. So if you are busting your hump trying to get to work, let's say somewhere in California or in Nevada or Arizona where gas is $6-7 depending on where you are, yeah, you're going to be burdened by inflation a whole lot more than somebody who is multimillionaire and earning that's moderate. 7% is moderate return on your investment. If you're aggressive and you're pushing 20%, or you're an angel investor and you're demanding multiples of your investment in return within 5 years, or even shorter distance, I mean, it really depends on your agreement. There's so much to this, and people just think that the immediacy is the problem. It isn't. Wealth is being aggregated at the top because people have taken trickle down economics as if it is an absolute, and it's sociopathic is what it is. Start paying people or it's going to get a whole lot worse. Society won't stand for this much longer. Let's go on to the next article. And that is a KFC. It's in the Hatch Ideas channel. A KFC franchisee turned a former bank in rural New York into, quote, the most beautiful KFC in the world, end quote, and see what it looks like inside. Let's post this into both chats. I'll have to figure out a way so that I can post in one place and it posts to both. I know that there's something out there, but I just haven't integrated it yet into my workflow. This article's over at businessinsider.com by Mary Meisenzahl. And let's see. I think any modern deployment of a fast food restaurant looks really sexy right out of the gate. But the moment that you see the quality decline in the food, you're going to see the quality decline rapidly in the environment. This is what happened with Toys R Us. Toys R Us was built in the 70s and just died on the vine. If they would have evolved their product and made it a little bit more competitive, what ended up happening is basically everything stagnated. Nobody wanted to go in. Everybody could buy everything outside via Amazon or some other online retailer that had a smaller carbon footprint and no retail debt. So, and by that I mean they didn't have to worry about the same level of taxes. They didn't have to worry about the same level of and I'm talking about the customers now. They didn't have to worry about the same type of tax or shipping. The business online didn't have to worry about the store and increasing the dollars per square foot to the point where going into a store meant you had to walk sideways, or there were like knockoff Chinese bric-a-brac and tchotchkes on fold-up tables outside. That's always the death knell of a business. But hyping up a brand new restaurant is great. It'll get a whole bunch of attention, but if it isn't maintained, if it isn't kept clean and spotless, if customer service starts to wane, the shop is dead. It's done. You might as well just cut your losses, sell it to somebody else who wants to reinvest more. But what I always see when I'm talking to somebody, when I'm working with somebody, it's usually because it's a little bit too far into the down curve and they're starting to put out fires. And, when you roll in there and you see that they haven't been taking care of their business, because they've been taking their draw so that they still have money, but the establishment is starting to fail because they're not reinvesting other than stasis, or survival. Um, that's when everything starts to fail. So I hope that a brand new shop like this maintains that sexy appeal and has the customer base drawn into it to see just how beautiful and clean and operational it is, instead of just kind of let it wither away. But this looks really good. I really like this. They have the drive-through teller is a drive-through now, and they have this round building like a rotunda, um, and it looks pretty inside too. Everything's bright red and white. Um, got Colonel Sanders' image just blazoned on the side of the building. It looks like a giant laser cut image of the um, sorry, I'm 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 actually kind of at a loss for words. They did a really bang up job on converting this bank into a KFC. Um, wow. Well, I hope that they're actually paying these people well, because food service is just thankless. It's so thankless. I once tried to work in the industry and somebody paid me $50 and said, get out of the industry, because I was not very efficient, um, because I wanted to hang out and talk with the customers. Uh, and while customers appreciated it, the ones that were delayed did not appreciate it. So I bowed out almost immediately from food service, and I just have mad respect for anybody that can balance it well. Um, so good on you. There's the Colonel. The Colonel was everywhere. Maybe it's like a little North Korea inside this building, because the Colonel is everywhere. And if you do anything, you are going to regret it. You do anything to that picture. Wow, this is really good. I love the interior of this building. So let's see. I want to see exactly where it is. Painted Post, New York. Okay. Converted bank has floor to ceiling windows. It's called the Crystal Bucket as a nod to Corning's history as the Crystal City because of its glass making history. Interesting. 25,000 location portfolio in Painted Post, New York. So KFC opened one of the most impressive restaurants in its 25,000 location portfolio. 25,000. It's amazing. Okay, I've got to keep going. I'm like halfway through my very short list, and I'm not getting far because I'm just amazed by the news today. Maybe this will knock me down a notch, and I'll just focus on the news and not soapbox in fascination about the architecture. Germany declares natural gas shortage after Russia throttled its supply over the Ukraine war. I've been mentioning this since the conflict. It's not really a conflict. Russia is invading Ukraine, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. I mean, there's a message and a marketing hype to why they are invading Ukraine, but it's really for Putin trying to put the band back together. This is in the Hatch Ideas channel. Germany says its gas is in short supply. Russia started cutting gas flows to the country June 14th. A minister said Thursday that Germany was moving into the second of its three-step emergency plan for gas supply. The final step would see the government allocating gas in the country, and Germany declared a natural gas shortage on Thursday after Russia throttled it. And this is one of the problems. This is an article over at Business Insider by Sophia Ankel, or Ankel. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, what the inflection is, but this is a problem with any country that doesn't have its own supply, and that's why countries like the United States have reserves. Now, Germany has reserves, but depending on consumption rate, it can go by pretty quick. When you have an aggressor and the aggressor sees the chance of hobbling you by cutting the gas supply and trickling it down so that you think everything is okay, and there are people that are in the German government going, hey, the supply is getting smaller and smaller. um, all that Russia has to do is turn it off and it'll hobble Germany. I think this is the same thing that's happening in many countries where there is a supplier and the consumer, and there isn't a domestic producer that can fit the bill in Germany in its entirety. And I don't believe that geothermal, wind, solar are defensible enough against an aggressor to offset for the long term uh, the usage, the consumption of fossil fuels. We have to switch to nuclear, and that is defensible. Uh, we just have to do it right so that we don't have uh, nuclear power related issues. Unfortunately, for lack of a better term of what nuclear power is, it is nothing but a steam generator, just producing a mad amount of steam. And therein lies the problem. We have to have the fissile material so that we can generate enough heat to turn a steam turbine, and that is defensible, but nobody wants the waste as a byproduct. But there is research being done, and a lot of research needs to be poured into it. But why solve the problem when people are made rich by doing the fundamental research? Not to mention, all it takes is a security breach, and some other country can take your fundamental research and develop it themselves and save billions of dollars in quote unquote wasted when you fail your critical thinking check. Fundamental research is not something that always comes out with a net positive. It can show a way not to do something. So it's not wasted money. It's going back into the economy. It's paying people to do fundamental research. The problem is when, again, like I said, a breach takes place and all that fundamental research is stolen by some other country. Meanwhile, that same country is saying, we don't do that. Yeah, right. So Russia started cutting the gas flows in Germany a couple of weeks ago. Last week, Gazprom, the state-controlled Russian energy company, announced that it cut natural gas flows through the Nord Stream pipeline running into Germany by around 60%, and that will drive the price of domestic fuel up quite a bit, unless companies stop taking so much in the margin, the profit margin. Profit margin is juice. You pay all your bills. That profit margin is supposed to, in all likelihood, in all forms of success, it should be a moderate amount that allows the price to recoup the costs for your products, as well as pay the employees, as well as have a little bit of juice to store away so that you can reach into that and do some more development. But for whatever reason, there are people that have to have 30, 60% margins, and it's insane. And constant growth. You stakeholders need to back off on always having to grow. The reason why we have inflation, the reason why we have this constant assumed good rate of 3% growth, which is just bogus. It's a business model. It's not the reality. You should be at stasis. And if you push a little bit, you still have stasis, but that's not what happens. Everybody has to have 3% or more. And I just told you that a moderate return on your money being invested somewhere is 7%. That's twice the rate. How do you have twice the growth rate, yet the assumed natural inflation rate is 3%? Boggles the mind, right? Anyway, let's continue on to the next article, and we can come back and talk about stuff either tomorrow or another day. It's fine. I don't know if anybody's even in my chats. Let's go on to the next article. And this is owner of Florida Steakhouse says he's become a full-time chef who cooks 200 steaks a day due to the pressures of a labor shortage. Oh my God, really? A steakhouse owner actually has to cook? That's a shocker. That's exactly what everybody should be doing, right? If you're the owner, you should have some skin in the game. Jay Johnson, owner of Bubba's Roadhouse and Saloon, cooking in the kitchen. A Florida Steakhouse owner has become a full-time chef due to the lack of staff. Bubba's should have been anyway. That's when you're running the business and you're not in the shop, then really what you're doing is living off the juice that other people are squeezing. And so you are nothing more than a cost burden to the bottom line, unless your butt's in the shop and you are putting out product. You are a burden on the bottom line, and your stakeholders, because it's a steakhouse, stakeholders, your steakhouse owner partners, if you have partners, should be concerned. Otherwise, what you're doing is basically saying, well, I'm paying those people to work, so here's $7.50. I don't know what they're actually getting paid, but I guarantee you he's taking home more money than anybody in that business. I can feel it in my bones, and if I'm wrong, then let me know, Jay. Let's see. Bubba's Roadhouse cooked 400 steaks on Father's Day, but had to shut the day after as it had no staff. The lack of staff meant Bubba's had to take items off the menu and do without a hostess at the door. A shortfall in staff in Florida Steakhouse has forced the owner to become a full-time chef in charge of cooking around 200 steaks a day. Good. I guess they realized that Bubba was never around. Kate Duffy is the writer of this article over at businessinsider.com. And maybe if you've been doing it for 20 years, you want to retire, well, then sell the business. I mean, for whatever time that person wasn't in the shop, they were a burden on the bottom line. How much were they paying the people that they got sick and tired of it to the point where they left? How about that? Let's see in this article if they say how much they were paying. Oh, yeah. There we go. The Department of Labor says Florida's minimum wage is $10 an hour. Gas is $7 a gallon, $6 a gallon, $5 a gallon. Who cares? It's $5 a gallon, let's say. A year ago, it was $2.50. So now the people that are making $10 an hour have an additional $2.50 taken off, and they still have to drive into work because people don't get paid the moment that they wake up and get in the car and start driving. No, they don't get paid until they're in the shop and they are working, right? So while tipped employees are required to receive $7, it's actually $6.98, let's be precise, per the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association. I mean, how insane is that? Johnson pays his staff $13 an hour and his front house of staff $7 with tips, but said they can earn between $150 and $200 in a day, while bartenders can make up to $400 a day. Everyone is paid for working overtime, he added. $13. Okay? So for that to make economic sense, you can't live in an apartment. Not in Florida. You got to stack yourself like cordwood in somebody's basement just so that you can live, because you're only making $13 an hour. People should be making somewhere around $25 an hour. This is all insane. So let's see. I'm curious, the owner isn't running out there and saying what their salary is. How much is their draw? Okay, they probably have maybe an enumerated salary somewhere, but they're actually doing a draw. They're taking money out of the bottom line of the business each month, and they're paying themselves before they're paying everybody else. I'd be curious to see how much he is getting paid, because if they're making if with tips they're making $150 to $200 a day, but they're still working 8 hours, they're only making about $20 a day. I mean, an hour. And that's still short. And they have to bust their hump to hit that, I'm sure. Let's go on to the next article. Susie Orman has a warning for those who want to quit during the Great Resignation. Oh, I'm sure that this is going to be the illumination of my life. The job market is hot, but inflation is high, and there are fears about impending recession. Here's what Susie Orman says you need to do. This is in the Hatch Ideas channel as well. Again, we talk about business in that show. I haven't launched it yet though. So this is over at CNBC, and sometimes my browser kind of borks on this, and I haven't figured out why. But anyway, this article is over at CNBC by Michelle Fox, and let's see. More than 4.4 million Americans quit their jobs in April, and job openings hit 11.9 million, according to the latest data available from the U.S. Department of Labor. By the way, again, there's this talking about there's only 3.4% unemployment, and I think that's insane, people. There's no way that you can have 4.4 million Americans quit their jobs in April and unemployment is low. You know why the unemployment is low? It's because there aren't any jobs. You can have low unemployment if people stop looking and there aren't any jobs. You're not really unemployed. There aren't any opportunities to get a job. Yet at the same time, there's fears about impending recession, rising inflation, and headlines about layoffs. Everything is more expensive, said Orman, who joined CNBC senior personal finance correspondent Sharon Epperson on CNBC's Twitter Space conversation. Invest with pride, ready, set, grow. You may find that certain corporations start to cut back because their expenses are so high and their stocks maybe aren't going or doing what they want them to be doing. So let's see, is there anything in there? Meanwhile, 68% of chief financial officers responding to CNBC's CFO Council survey said they think a recession will occur during the second half of 2023. No, I think it's going to hit us about November. The beginning of the recession is going to start November of 2022. Inflation has yet to slow down, although many had hoped that it would. Consumer prices rose 8.6% in May. That's the highest since 1981. That's something that I've already spoken about. The CPI is going through the roof. Inflation is going through the roof. You better change your eating habits. And I let everybody know pretty much day one of me starting this show, and previously when I wasn't doing this as a stream, I had heard from somebody in the food industry that said the days of cheap food are over, and that's a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, right after the pandemic started, when I heard this. And you could go out and you could fill a massive freezer for like $400, and now $200 will get you like 3 bags of food. It's wildly expensive out there, and I say that quite often. If you decide to walk away from your job, it's imperative to have an 8 to 12 month emergency fund, said Orman, host of the Women in Money podcast. Yeah, nobody has 8 to 12 months. Depending on what your burn rate is, if you have a mortgage, depending on the size of the mortgage, it all scales. I'll just leave it at that. It all scales. But if you are living hand to mouth, then obviously none of this matters. If you lose your job, or if you want to leave your job, that gives you the freedom to continue to pay your bills while you're figuring out what to do with your life. Yeah, no doubt. This is all basic stuff. Who are they talking to? I guess a broad gamut of people, but it's all basic stuff. Have a job lined up before you quit your job. Tell the people that you are applying to not to contact your current employer, and let them know that they probably wouldn't take kindly to you seeking other opportunity. Because but read the room. If your manager, or the manager's manager, is cool with people shopping around because that's how culture is nowadays. Everybody, there's zero loyalty between employee and employer across the board. Every once in a while, you'll find an anomaly. But we've built this culture. Business owners are the primary cause of this. Built a culture of at-will employment where you can quit at a moment's notice and it'll piss off a business owner. Let me do something real quick. There we go. It'll piss off a business owner or a manager, but they want to be able to fire you at a moment's notice too. So we've built a culture of basically telling people, you don't like it, walk. And if I don't like you, I'll make you walk. Anyway, the next article is over in the... Did I already post it? Let's see here. Yeah, okay, so that's already in the chat. Nike to fully exit Russia will scale down in coming months. Nike's making a full exit from Russia 3 months after suspending its operations there, the company said in an emailed statement Thursday. I think it's interesting timing. They started scaling back and they were removing their assets, I'm sure, from Russia so that it couldn't be nationalized. And once they pull out of Russia, Putin had already said anybody that leaves has a 10-year embargo on returning. If you leave, then everything's nationalized. So screw you, you're out. So I think Russia is going to kind of isolate itself more and more and become its own, like a Russian China, where it's isolationist, it's siloed, it's focusing on its internal culture, yet still part of the global economy and reaping the rewards of a social world, but very antisocial. All of the citizens within, they are a spectrum of personalities, and they don't necessarily want anything to do with any of this. They just want to come to YouTube and watch videos. They want to go to Twitch and hang out and play games and watch people play games. They want to live their lives, but there are these power-hungry sociopaths that just really want to take over. And it's so unsettling to people who know that society could be better if not for this kind of tribalism garbage, and trying to make a name for yourself in a destructive manner, like leveling Ukraine in an effort to free the people. Everybody was free there. There wasn't anybody oppressed in Ukraine. Anyway, Nike said March 3rd would be a temporary suspend operations at all of its Nike-owned and operated stores in Russia in response to Moscow's actions in Ukraine, adding that those still were open were operated by independent partners, and they will probably be cut off at some point. For Nike, which gets less than 1% of its revenue from Ukraine and Russia combined, the move is largely symbolic rather than material to its results. But that's a good thing for Nike. So good on you, Nike. I'd say that I stand with Nike, but they've done questionable things in the past themselves. So let's go on to the next article, and that is Apple to support verified brand logos in mail anti-spam feature. One of my projects back in the day, was a free email service with other additional options that were subscription based. Nobody wanted to pay for it, but it would not, you would not get mail from anybody you didn't want mail from, period. You couldn't spoof it, you couldn't trick it, you couldn't do anything. You didn't want mail from somebody, you would not get mail from somebody. I deployed it. It was called Mail on Me. After that, went public, not public as in stock, but when it went out to the people as a retail service, I created a commercial service called MailGuard, which is different than the MailGuard that exists now. There is a service called MailGuard, but it was an email firewall that prevented corporations from receiving mail that was from or that the business didn't want. So nobody would ever get spam. People didn't want to pay for it, and I didn't want to do what Google does, which is parse everybody's email and provide ads based on it. Even though it's all automated, I just didn't want anybody or anything reading mail, because if you don't realize it, mail is plain text. If you think that your mail is secure and you're sending pictures and you're sending comments about how you want to invade the Capitol on January 6th, your mail is unencrypted. When it can be encrypted in Gmail, it can be encrypted in Microsoft Mail, Office 365, it can be encrypted in place, but the moment it moves from one place to another, it's unencrypted. Why? Because everybody would have to have innumerable numbers of keys so that everybody can communicate, and it's an untenable position, really. Well, my service stopped it before it was ever sent by the spamming or unwanted sender. Never even hit my servers. It was wonderful, but nobody wanted to pay for it. I would love to bring it back on board. And if people were to tell me, hey, Mayor Watt, bring it to ohmTown, I would relaunch it as a service, but not right now. Not without knowing that somebody's going to be using and paying it. Anyway, from iOS 16, iPad OS 16, and Mac OS Ventura, Apple Mail will support showing a company's official logo to indicate the email's legitimacy from its verified firm. That's going to be very, very difficult. Got its second beta release for developers, an unannounced feature that had been spotted. So it's support for a called brand indicator for message identification, or BIMI. So this article is over at appleinsider.com by William Gallagher, and that's what they talk about in this message, that basically there's going to be a process so that the brand's logo will be displayed, but the email must pass DMARC authentication, which basically is, it's not the content of the email that's authenticated. It's a header that says this is an authentic email from X, Y, and Z sender. Any spam company can copy a logo, but it won't get displayed unless the email passes a series of authentication tests called DMARC. Now, there's a lot more to it, and I don't want to get into the technical side of this. But people will still be able to display a logo in the email and even spoof the sender. The difference will be that the email will be, or the logo will be in the email and not, it'll be outside the DMARC. So, yeah, we need an evolutionary or revolutionary step in our email processes, and it's primarily because email never had the idea of security in mind. It was tacked on like PGP or GPG. Let's go on to the next article. That too is in the Hatch Ideas channel. An early PayPal employee says the PayPal mafia, which includes Elon Musk, have been successful founders, partly thanks to their counterintuitive hiring process. So many of PayPal's early employees, including Elon Musk, have gone on to found successful companies. The former employee told the Tim Ferriss show that the way PayPal hired people may have played a part in that success. Jason Portney said PayPal focused on hiring for capability rather than people with specific skills. And it's a subtle but distinct difference, folks. Capability means that I can groom you to be a great CEO if I'm on the board of directors and I hire you based on that. Oh my gosh, the URL limit here. I just hit the URL limit here. Hold on a second. I'm going to throw that in chat and see if that works. That's going to suck. I'm going to have to get a shortener. Wow. Okay. I don't know what to do about that, folks, over on YouTube. The live stream URL, the text has a limit, or when you want to type something in there, it has a 200 character limit, and I hit it by 2 characters or 3 characters. Anyway, so the difference between hiring for capability versus specific skills means that a person can grow into a position or act as this, that, or the other. And that's something that I've always appreciated. If I go into a business and I start my holistic analysis of the business, I'm looking for people that are more capable than what has been enumerated in a resume, because sometimes a person is missed because they are being treated as a utility for that particular purpose. So just because you're good with talking with people doesn't mean you should be on the phones. Maybe you can be doing something else beyond customer service or sales. Anyway, I think it's an interesting take. If you want to learn more about that part of it, then you can go over to businessinsider.com and read this article by Stephen Jones. One of the best things that you can really understand about business is, or people in general, it's a societal thing, is when you are rich, I don't know, a la Elon Musk, and others, when you don't have to worry about where food comes from, you can excel in pretty much anything. But when you have to worry about your meals because you're being paid $7 an hour plus tips, I'm looking at you, Bubba, it becomes a problem. The next article, I'm going to move on because we're at 2:00, is this article there. I'm going to throw it in chat in both places. And how President Biden's symbolic tax cut will impact oil markets. He explained how he's aiming to transform the NFT collection into an entertainment brand. This is an article that is integrated into this symbolic tax cut article, because the way that Business Insider likes to throw things, it'll stick it right into something. So top of the morning, readers, Phil Rosen here, and that's Phil Rosen writing this. Yesterday, I sat down with the CEO of Doodles, an NFT project of cute sketches that has topped 500 million in sales. NFTs, I think, are bunk. Yes, I'm picking a fight with everybody. He explained how he's aiming to transform the NFT collection into entertainment brand, and then it gets pulled into. That said, I love reading the articles like that from this place because it's such a weird juxtaposition. That said, President Biden is sweating gas prices a lot more than the cryptocurrency bear market. Let's see what he's planning and how it impacts oil markets. Well, I hate to break it to you, nobody knows truly how it's going to impact. But I have a prediction, and I'm not even going to bother reading all the rest of this. It said, I'll read some of it. So the White House called on Congress yesterday to suspend the federal gas tax, which is about 18%, or not 18%, 18 cents. Though the move is largely symbolic and comes up as prices at the pump weigh on his reelection ambitions and inflation squeezes Americans. While it's possible that relatively cheaper gas prices actually fuels more demand, they say what I say, thus pushing prices up even further. Oil actually slumped through most of yesterday, falling as much as 7%. But what I say is going to happen is prices will end up, as of yesterday, increasing 8 cents or 10 cents, somewhere between 8 and 10 cents, because it's going to cause more people to go out thinking that 18 cents makes a freaking difference. It doesn't. It won't. The only thing that will make a difference is greater competition for fuel. And that will only come in the guise of power generation, and that will only come from increasing partner private um, uh, composites of power generation. And that's not what's going on. Everybody is just happy with what's in place now for power generation. There's very little competition. And you'll get companies like Enron that shut down power plants to increase the revenue. That's what happened with Enron, by the way, and why I joke about the Enron 2000 shredder. At any rate, what's going to end up happening is gas companies are going to raise their gas price by 10 cents, 8 to 10 cents, in the next 2 days, I'd say. And I don't think it has anything to war in Ukraine. It has nothing to do with Russia. It has everything to do with greedflation. Trying to recover the losses, even though everybody had their own level of burden from the last 2.5 years, they're going to start pulling that money out of all of the people who need to consume just to get to work. And it's twisted. Okay, so the next article is over in Hatch Ideas as well. It's a very business heavy day today. Let's throw this in chat. It'll be in the show notes. I'm actually going to do an edited version of this over in the news categories for ohmTown, even though this new live stream is going to remain. So in this Hatch Ideas channel article that was aggregated from Business Insider, it's getting more expensive to make electric cars as raw material spikes, forcing manufacturers to push up prices. This again speaks to the greedflation. There is enough resources out there that we didn't need to raise prices, but there is an opportunity here to extract more wealth from those who want to get an electric vehicle. And because there are fewer producers than you can actually imagine, you think that there's a lot of competition, and there isn't. There are very few producers of this raw material, and a lot of them are Chinese owned in foreign countries. And because the way that it works is loans go to these foreign countries, China has these really these agreements that make them basically owners of the region, and so they own the resources. The cost of raw materials needed to make electric vehicles is rising, CNBC reported. The average raw material was around $8,255 per vehicle in May. Let's click the link. It'll take us over to Business Insider, and Abby Wallace is the author. This is one of the problems. We are not in control of these hostile environments. There's conflict zones. There are regions that are owned by other countries, nationalized regions, and agreements are basically like extortion. It's not really maximizing the profit. It's trying to hobble the other. Instead of being in agreement about something, it's almost a conflict in and of itself. Just it's instead of a blue collar, it's a white collar conflict zone. EV manufacturers, including Tesla, have increased the price of their cars, yes, substantially. I will probably stop the purchase of my electric vehicle. I'm trying to get a canoe. The average cost of raw materials, including the cobalt, nickel, lithium needed to make EV batteries, is now around $8,255 per vehicle. So the cost represents an increase of more than 140% from raw materials in 2020. So March of 2020. Now we're past March in 2022. 2 years later, it's doubled in price, almost tripled. And the year's not over, so we'll see. So go over and read the rest of that article if you want to. But the context is there. We know why things are as expensive as they are, and it's greed. It's not because of demand. It's greed. There's more than enough for everybody. Inflation is forcing Americans to change their diets. The rise in the cost of living has prompted people to abandon meat and eat out less. Yep. This is in Stock Marketeers, takes us to Market Watch. The article is by Zoe Han, or Han. And so people are getting rid of meat. Yep. I say grow it in your basement. You can grow microgreens in your basement, folks, and it's pretty inexpensive. But the more I talk about it, the more I realize that some company's going to come along and start buying all of the seed producing companies so that they can control it. I'm looking at you, GP. And the Koch brothers and others. There are others out there, but those two just came to mind. Cutting back on trips to restaurants and bars is the most common change, accounting for roughly 8 to 10 people. Some 72% said that they have changed their shopping habits, reported, and cut down on their meat purchases. Among those who reported changing their eating habits, nearly half said that they're buying more prepackaged or frozen food to mitigate their higher costs. And over half reported that they stopped buying organic produce, which is a shame. Although, for me, I don't think that genetically GMO products are bad for you. Depends on the genetic tweak. U.S. inflation hit a 40-year high in May. It'll be higher this month. And prices increased 8.6% compared to a year ago, according to Consumer Price Index. Shoppers who paid 21 prices would have gotten 43% fewer eggs than the same time a year ago, and 15% fewer oranges, according to the BLS. Yep. So tell me, where is the higher prices coming from? I've said it in my other streams, other episodes of Hometown Daily News Show. Go watch them. Come back and tell me. If you have an idea, throw it in chat. Let's talk about it. Gen Z is paying double what boomers paid for college, and experts say costs will keep rising. Now Gen Z students, who are also entrepreneurs, are using their profits for education expenses. 3 student entrepreneurs explain how they pay for college with their revenue. So this is something that I talk to people about, and I suggest if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, then start striking out now while you're in college, even high school. Take your idea and start making it into a minimum viable product and start marching it out there and getting it seen by people. So this article is over at Business Insider by Sharia Bhattacharya and Jennifer Ortakalis Dawkins, I think. I'm not sure. I'm really sorry if I'm hacking up the name, but anyway. So I encourage you to read this because they're talking about student entrepreneurs and their college and business life. So I wouldn't be able to do it justice as a summary or skimming over this. I would encourage you to go and look at it. But it's very important for you, if you are business minded, to start looking for a possible solution while you're in college, because afterward, you're either going to have money saved up, which you rarely can when you're a college student, and you're going to have to market it in a different way, because you can actually market your product in college to friends, and your friends will go and market it to other friends, and you can actually turn them into the cheerleaders for your enterprise. If I could do it all over again, I would have started in college and would have stuck to it. I struck out on my own in the sense of the startup community, and it becomes much more difficult. I'm not a traditional student. I returned to college after decades of being in business on my own and kind of boots on the ground, but it's a different mindset and it's much harder than doing it this way. Start in college, generate that entrepreneurial spirit. You can even hire your friends to go out and sell, and they get a piece of the action while you are getting them to expand your sphere of influence. And then you can pay for college instead of having crippling college debt. Sydney Wong's love of jewelry led to an online Etsy shop that booked $35,000 so far this year, and she's 21. Declan Black's freelance UX design work on Fiverr earned him $4,000 in the last 4 months. So that's a side gig, but it's offsetting a lot of value for, well, it's providing a lot of benefit for Declan Black. And this last person is Ali Dieguez, I guess, or Dieguez. Combined her passions for fitness and thrifting into a resale business that booked close to $14,000 in sales last year. So not bad. And it's got to start somewhere, and you might as well tap that local market, particularly in college. You've got a captive audience, and only if you push too hard are they going to be sick of your stuff. So. Okay, so with that in mind, that is the end of the ohmTown Daily News Show for June 23rd, 2022. If you stumbled across this, then awesome. If you did not, then you missed out on so much wisdom. But with that in mind, thank you very much. I'm done for the day. I might come back and do either a continuity report show where we stream portions of the audio, but none of the video of Friends, and we talk about it from the merging of business, technology, and society, and the fact that it's a 30-year-old show, and I haven't watched it since it launched, when it originally aired, I should say. But other than that, this weekend will be Hatch Ideas, and I'm going to be talking about some business, some stocks, some perceptions of Jim Cramer, and other things. I don't know. So be sure to follow me, like, subscribe, all of that kind of stuff. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.